So in the previous class, we had discussed about the uh, types of blood ABO, RH positive and RH negative factors. Then we had also discussed about one of the abnormality, that is erythroblastosis fetalis. So wherein a negative blood group to men. So if when she marries a positive blood group man, so she is going to have a positive blood group child. The first delivery wouldn't be a problem. The first pregnancy wouldn't be a problem. So, but after giving birth to the young one, there is a possibility some of the fetus blood getting mixed up with the mother's blood. As a result, the mother's blood would have developed antibodies against this Rh positive factor. So the next time she conceives, the second time that she has a pregnancy, so the possibility of the child uh, getting affected by this antibodies are more. So the mother's antibodies act against the Rh factor of the fetus, and it might lead to the uh, birth of a still dead born child. So that we call it as erythroblastosis fetalis because of the antibodies within the mother's blood. So in order to overcome this uh, abnormality, generally it is prescribed that the mother immediately after giving birth to the first child, she is injected with this uh, the antibody destroying uh, injection she is injected with. So that we had discussed in the previous class. Okay, so today's class we'll be discussing about the blood vascular system and blood vessels. The types of blood vessels are, so majorly the types of blood vessels that we have are three types: the arteries, veins, and capillaries. So the arteries, veins, and capillaries are the three main types of blood vessels. So first we'll discuss about this artery. So they carry blood from heart to other tissues. So artery carry blood from heart to other tissue. They contain oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Okay, the arteries carry blood from, that is the oxygenated blood from heart to other tissues. They contain oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Okay, the smaller branches of artery we call it as arterioles. The smaller branches of artery we call it as arterioles. Okay, you can see the arteries, they carry blood from heart, and they from heart to other tissues, and they contain oxygenated blood. All these red colored parts are the arteries with arterioles. The blue colored part are the veins with the venules. Okay, so the arteries with arterioles, they carry the oxygenated blood and they are blue in color, and the veins, sorry, they are red in color, the arteries, since they have the oxygenated blood. The blue colored ones are the veins with deoxygenated blood, veins and venules of deoxygenated blood. So arteries, they carry blood from heart to other tissues. They contain oxygenated blood except for pulmonary artery, which carries the deoxygenated blood to lungs. So they're similar branches of arteries, we call it as smaller branches of artery, we call it as arterioles. So these are the terms that you should remember regarding the arteries. So the arteries have three layers. They have circled it here. You can see that. So the first layer is tunica intima. So they are, the first layer is the tunica intima, which is the innermost layer. Tunica intima. Okay, so innermost layer, they are made up of squamous epithelium. So endothelium we generally call them as. So the tunica intima, they are made up of the innermost layer. They are the squamous endothelium. So tunica media, that is middle layer, they are made up of smooth muscles and elastic fibers. So the tunica media is made up of smooth muscles and elastic fibers. Tunica externa, the outermost layer, is called as tunica externa. So they are made up of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers. Tunica externa is also called as tunica adventitia. So from the inner side, the arteries are made up of three layers. From the inner side, the first layer is tunica intima, which is made up of the squamous endothelium. Then tunica media, which is made up of the smooth muscles and elastic layers. The middle layer, which is made up of smooth muscles and elastic layers. The tunica externa or adventitia. So they are made up of this fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers. This is what you can notice in the section of this artery. So don't worry about these diagrams. You need not have to draw the diagrams. A simple diagram to know this three layers doesn't matter. They would never be asking you the diagrams of it. But to understand the concept better, you have to be able to visualize. So these diagrams would be helpful. Okay. Unless and until I tell you that these diagrams have to be remembered for your examination, so please don't worry on this. Okay, it is for the explanation part we have that uh, different layers shown here. The next thing that we are going to discuss is veins. They carry blood towards the heart. So the veins carry blood towards the heart. So they contain deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. So pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood from lungs to the uh, left auricle. So they do that. So from lungs to left auricle, the oxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary veins. Except for pulmonary veins, all the veins carry the deoxygenated blood. So the veins are going to carry blood towards the heart. So they might ask you for 2 marks, differentiate between the arteries and veins. Apart from that, many questions can be framed from NEET concerned with this veins. So you should be prepared for that. So they carry blood towards heart. They contain deoxygenated blood, except pulmonary veins. The smaller branches are called venules. Okay, veins are also three layered, but tunica media is comparatively thin. So the veins are also three layered, but tunica media is comparatively thin. So that is what you have to remember about. So the veins, they carry blood towards heart. They contain deoxygenated blood, except pulmonary vein. The smaller branches are called venules. Veins are also three layered, but tunica media is comparatively thin. That is, the middle layer is comparatively thin, whereas in case of arteries, they were thicker. Okay. So veins are also three layered, but tunica media is comparatively thin when compared to arteries. In tissues, arterioles divides into thin-walled and single-layered vessels. They are called capillaries. They unite into venules. So in tissues, the arterioles further divide into thin-walled and single-layered vessels. So they do not have many layers. They are single-layered vessels. They are called as capillaries, and they unite into venules. So what are capillaries? Capillaries in tissues, arterioles divides into thin walled and single layered vessels. So arterioles divides into thin walled and single layered vessels. So they have a single layered vessels. They are called as capillaries. They unite into venules. Now, the next thing that we are going to discuss is the structure of heart. So this diagram is required. So 10 labeling, many times they have asked it for 5 mark questions. So this one would be required. Your textbook would be having a simpler diagram. Here it is colorful, but in the textbook, it is much more simpler diagram. So you can go through this diagram and you have to practice this diagram. So vertical section of heart or VS of heart or LS of heart also they can give it as. Okay, longitudinal section of heart. So let us discuss about the structure of heart. See, heart is mesodermally derived organ and it is located in this mediastinum. So the space where it is located, we call it as mediastinum. And you can see that they are in between two lungs. Okay, and there is also a diaphragm. The heart is just located at the center of it. Heart is a little tilted towards the left side. So you can find that the tip of the or apex of the heart, it is tilted towards the left side. So heart is a mesodermally derived organ located in mediastinum. So it is located in mediastinum and they are very close to the lungs. You can see that the pulmonary artery supplies the blood to the uh, pulmonary artery supplies blood to the lungs, that is especially the deoxygenated blood where they are purified, and that purified blood is brought back to the heart from lungs through this pulmonary veins. So that is what you can notice here. So heart is mesodermally derived organ. It is located in mediastinum. Okay, so the space we call it as mediastinum. It is protected by, heart is protected by this double layered pericardium. So here you have this heart protected by this double layered pericardium. The pericardial space, that is between the outer and inner pericardium, they have this pericardial space. So you can see this pericardium is made up of fibrous pericardium and serous pericardium. So the parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium, in between them they have this pericardial fluid. So the pericardial space between pericardial membranes is filled with pericardial fluid. It reduces the friction between the heart walls and the surrounding tissues. So, what is this pericardial fluid doing? It is going to reduce the friction between the heart walls and the surrounding tissues. So, the pericardium layer is two membrane. It is filled in between. It has a pericardial space, and this pericardial space is filled with pericardial fluid. So the pericardial fluid reduces the friction between the heart walls and the surrounding tissues. It reduces the frictions between the heart walls and the surrounding tissues. That is about the pericardium. So human heart has four chambers. So the two upper atria, or we also call it as auricles. So this is the right auricle and left auricle. So you might be wondering why, even though the diagram is facing towards us, and my left hand side it is being called as right auricle, and my right hand side it is being called as left auricle. See, you should see it from the viewpoint of the heart of a person when it is sectioned heart of a person. So this is my but we are viewing it in the opposite direction. So from this point of view, you have to see this is my left atrium and this is the right auricle. So that heart, when it is drawn in the diagram, it is tilted here. So what is left atrium in the human being? So it looks to us from for the viewer it is right side, but from the viewpoint of the person's heart, it is left. For the viewer, it is right. So it is in the direction that has been placed. So you need not have to get confused why the right side is right side of our hand. They are calling it as left auricle. It is from the viewpoint of the person's heart. Okay, so that heart, which is the left auricle, and right auricle, when it is seen by the viewer, opposing viewer, so the left hand side of mine would be the right hand side of the person. Okay, it is just that our view of the heart, it varies. So the viewer's left would be the right and the viewer's right would be the left. So you shouldn't get confused much. So whenever it is the right side, you should remember it is left, and the left side you should remember it as right. So heart has four chambers, the two upper auricles and two lower ventricles. The walls, the cardiac muscles of the ventricles are, you can see that the walls, the cardiac muscles of the ventricles are much more thicker than that of the atria. So the walls of the ventricles are much more thicker than that of the atria. So, but the left ventricle is the most thickest because it has to pump the blood throughout the body. Okay, so the walls of the ventricles are, the cardiac muscles or walls of the ventricles are much more thicker than the auricles, because they have to pump the blood into the pulmonary artery as well as the aorta. They have to pump the blood. So the atria, the auricles or atria, are separated by interatrial septum. Similarly, the ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum. So interatrial septum separates the auricles, and interventricular septum separates the ventricles. So these are two things which are separating the auricles and the ventricles. So now if you look into the diagram of it, the auricles, they receive the opening of inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava. They are going to get the deoxygenated blood in the uh, right auricles, and that blood opens up into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it is pumped into the pulmonary artery. This is the pulmonary artery, which is bluish in color and indicates the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so the impure blood is collected, and from the right ventricle, the blood is pumped into the pulmonary artery, which branches into left pulmonary artery and right pulmonary artery. Okay, that is about the blood being received from there. So the left auricle, they are going to receive the oxygenated blood from the pulmonary veins. These two are the pulmonary veins, and they are reddish in color, indicating they are oxygenated blood. So the pulmonary veins, they are going to receive the blood from the uh, lungs, and this oxygenated blood is brought into the left auricle. From the left auricle, the blood is pumped into the left ventricle. So the left ventricle is more muscular than the right ventricle, because the left ventricle has to pump the blood to all parts of the body, and they are going to pump the blood into the aorta. So you can see this reddish colored one. So this aortic arch, so they are going to pump the blood into the aortic arch, and aorta supplies blood to all parts of the body. Since the left ventricle is more muscular, it can pump the blood to all parts of the body through the aorta. So that you have to remember between. And there is a valve between the right auricle and right auricle and right ventricle. So you should remember it as RT, tricuspid valve, or R square T. RT, you can remember it as. So that valve is, T stands for tricuspid valve. So this tricuspid valve prevents the backflow of blood. Similarly, the pulmonary artery also has the semilunar valves. They prevent the backflow of blood. So that is their main function of these valves. The left auricle and left ventricle, in between them, you can remember LBL or L square B. Okay, so that is again bicuspid valve. So B stands for bicuspid valve. So LB square. So the LBL, you can remember it as left auricle and left ventricle. They are having a valve in between them. That is the bicuspid valve. They have two valves, two cuspids in the valves. So they again they prevent the backflow of blood. And even the aortic valves are there, the semilunar valves, which prevents the backflow of aortic semilunar valves. They prevent the backflow of blood. So the pulmonary artery, they also have this pulmonary semilunar valves, then aortic semilunar valves. They are all, the valves are meant to prevent the backflow of blood. So these are all things that you have to remember regarding the labeling. So this is the inferior vena cava, superior vena cava. So this is the aortic arch, pulmonary artery, left pulmonary artery, right pulmonary artery. So this is the right auricle and right ventricle. In between, they have this tricuspid valve, RT or RT, you remember it as. Then here, the left auricle, you can remember, in between the left auricle and left ventricle, you can remember it as LBL. They have a bicuspid valve. Okay, so the interventricular septum, interauricular septum. So at least 10 labeling should be there. And as per that labeling, you'll be getting the marks. So whenever you are drawing a neat label diagram of VS of heart, 10 labeling should be there, and correct labeling. Technically, it should be right. So those correct labeling should be done by you. So these are things that you are expected when you draw the structure of human heart. Okay, so they are the labeling and brief description of the heart. Let us go about point by point. Heart has four chambers, two upper auricles and two lower ventricles. The walls of the cardiac muscles of the ventricles are much more thicker. The walls of the walls means the cardiac muscles of the ventricles are much more thicker than the that of auricles or atria. They are thinner walls. Why they should be thicker? Because they have to pump the blood into pulmonary arteries as well as aortic arch. But left ventricle is having much more thinner wall than the right ventricle because it has to pump blood throughout the body. So not just the lungs, it is throughout the body it has to pump the blood. So that is the reason left ventricle is much more muscular than right ventricle. Okay, the atria are separated by interatrial septum and or ventricles are separated by interventricular septum. In between atrium and ventricle, there is a thick fibrous atrioventricular septum with an opening. So in between the auricle and ventricle, there is a thick fibrous atrioventricular septum. So atrioventricular septum. So with an opening. So a tricuspid valve. So they have three muscular flaps or cusps. So they have three muscular flaps or cusps which guard the right atrium and right ventricle. So this tricuspid valve, why they are called as tricuspid valve? Because they have three muscular flaps or cusps which guards the opening of the between the right auricle and right ventricle. So they guard the opening between the right auricle and right ventricle. So a bicuspid valve or mitral valve, it is also called as. So it guards between the left auricle and the left ventricle. So I had asked you to remember it in a simple way, RT, LBL. So RTR, you can also remember it as LBL. So in between the right auricle and right ventricle, it is tricuspid valve. In LBL, in between left auricle and left ventricle, it is bicuspid valve. Bicuspid valve is also called as mitral valve, and it guards the opening between left atrium and left ventricle. I've already told you the function of these valves is to prevent the backflow of blood. That is the major function of these valves. So the tricuspid and bicuspid valve, they allow the flow of blood only in one direction. That is from atria to ventricles. So right ventricle has an opening to the pulmonary artery. Right ventricle has an opening to the pulmonary artery. So this is the pulmonary artery. And left ventricle has an opening to the uh, aortic arch, or it has an opening to aorta. So these openings have semilunar valves. Even these openings, that is pulmonary artery and aorta, they have semilunar valves. You can notice this semilunar valves. Okay, these semilunar valves, they prevent the backflow of blood. So all the valves, their major function is to prevent to have a unidirectional flow of blood and to prevent backward flow of blood. So that is their function. So the pulmonary semilunar valves, the aortic semilunar valves. So even these openings, they are having the semilunar valves. They prevent backward flow of blood. So this is how the entire heart is. But when you take a section of it, so this is how it looks. So the LS of or vertical section of heart. So this diagram is important. So there's a simplified diagram and easy to draw diagram in your textbook. So please look into it. This is exactly as it is in the heart. They have shown it. So simplified diagram is available in your textbook. So draw that and practice this diagram. So they have asked many times to draw a neat label diagram of VS of heart. Now the entire heart, if you look into, this is how it looks. You can see the three-dimensional view of superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. Then this is the right atrium. And here there is a complete left ventricle, right ventricle and left ventricle. So this is the left atrium and you can notice the pulmonary veins. So from the right ventricle arises uh, the left pulmonary, the arteries, pulmonary artery, which branches to right pulmonary artery and left pulmonary artery, and they supply blood to the right lungs and left lungs. Okay, deoxygenated blood it would be. So superior and inferior vena cava, they get the deoxygenated blood and they pump it into the right auricle. Okay, so that is about these structures. Then they also have this uh, cardiac vein, coronary arteries. Okay, so you should all look into this also, because even the heart muscles, they require the blood supply and oxygen. So the coronary arteries, sometimes as we age up, they are blocked. So they are blocked either by blood clotting or by deposition of calcium, or by deposition of cholesterol. They are blocked, and that leads to what we call it as myocardial infarction, death of the cardiac cells, heart attack. Okay, so the cardiac attack is different, heart attack is different. So the blockage of heart is brought about by these arteries. So whenever they are blocked by this blood clot or by the cholesterol, they lead to heart attack. So this is the apex of the heart. So the coronary artery, cardiac vein, so left ventricle, all of these you can notice in this complete view of the heart. Okay, so when you take a section of that, so this is what you can notice, the internal details of the heart. After understanding the VS of heart, vertical section of heart, next we'll go for the conducting system of heart, origin and conduction of impulses in heart. Heart is myogenic, that is, it is muscular in nature. It is controlled by the muscles and not by the. It is not neurogenic. See, we have a impulses. There is an origin and conduction of impulses that we are going to study. So it includes this conducting system of heart. It includes nodal tissues, bundles, and fibers. So the nodal tissues, the conduction of impulses or conducting system of heart consists of nodal tissues, bundles, and fibers. Nodal tissues are specialized cardiac musculature. So the sinus node, atrial node, you can notice here. So the nodal tissues are specialized cardiac musculature present in heart wall. So they are of two types: sinoatrial node or SAN in the right upper corner of the right atrium, atrioventricular node, that is AVN, in the lower left corner of the right atrium, close to the atrioventricular septum. Okay, AVN and SAN. So they are present here. So the sinoatrial node is present in the right upper corner of the right atrium. Right upper corner of the right atrium, you find the sinoatrial node or SAN. Okay, at the lower, in the lower left corner of the right atrium, in the lower left corner of the right atrium, close to the atrioventricular septum. So we can notice this AVN, that is atrioventricular node. So sinoatrial node, atrioventricular node, we notice these are the nodal tissues. From the AVN, so this is sinoatrial node and this is the AVN. From the AVN, a fibrous atrioventricular bundle, that is AV bundle, from the atrium. So you can notice this AV bundle. So they have all marked it. So the auriculoventricular bundle passes through atrioventricular septum. They pass through this atrioventricular septum and divides into right and left branch. So each branches pass through this ventricular wall of its side. In the ventricular wall of its side, they pass through this particular AV bundle. So they branch to form the right and left AV bundle. So the branch and each branch passes through the ventricular walls of its side. They pass through the ventricular walls of its side. In the ventricular walls, it breaks up into small fibers. So into minute fibers in the ventricular walls, they break into minute fibers, which we call it as Purkinje fibers. These fibers, along with the bundles, are known as, so this AV bundle and Purkinje fibers along with these bundles are known as bundle of His. So bundle of His is nothing but AV bundle plus Purkinje fibers. We call it as bundle of His. In the ventricular wall, so this AV bundle breaks up into minute in the ventricular walls. The AV bundle breaks up into minute fibers, which we call it as Purkinje fibers. So these Purkinje fibers, along with the AV bundles, they are known as bundle of His. So that is what you have to remember. From the auriculoventricular node, a bundle of, from the auriculoventricular node, a bundle of atrioventricular bundle, that is AV bundle, passes through the atrioventricular septum and divides into right and left branches. So each branch passes through the ventricular walls of its side. In the ventricular walls, it breaks up into minute fibers, which we call it as Purkinje fibers. So the Purkinje fibers, along with the auriculoventricular bundle, so we call it as bundle of His. So this is the conducting system of heart. So the nodal tissues, that is the sinoatrial node, they generate action potential without any external stimuli. That is, it is auto-excitable. See, such wonderful things are happening within our heart. Okay, the nodal tissue, they generate action potential without any external stimuli. That is, it is auto-excitable. So the nodal tissue, they are going to produce the action potential without any external stimuli. So they don't wait for any external stimuli. If they do that, it would be too late. So they are going to be auto-excitable. The nodal tissues, they generate action potential without any external stimuli. It is auto-excitable. That is what you have to remember. SAN initiates and maintains contraction of heart. So the SAN not only initiates, but it also maintains the contraction of heart by generating action potentials, which is 70 to 75 per minute. So it is called as pacemaker. The SAN, sinoatrial node, initiates and maintains contraction of heart. So sinoatrial node, they not only start but also maintain contraction of heart by generating action potential, which is 70 to 75 heartbeats per minute. So they are going to create an action potential which is 70 to 75 per minute. So it is called as pacemaker of the heart. So the sinoatrial node initiates and maintains contraction of heart by generating action potential, so which is 70 to 75 per minute. So it is auto excitable. We have already told you that action potential is generated without any external stimuli. So these SAN and AVN, they can generate this action potential, but SAN is maximum action potential is generated in SAN, and that action potential is 70 to 75 per minute. So it is called as pacemaker. So sinoatrial node is called as pacemaker. Pacemaker is also commonly called as heart of hearts. Hridaya ke hridaya. That is what is SAN. So the SAN is also called as pacemaker. So it is heart of hearts. So pacemaker is also called as heart of hearts. So here you can see the action potential that has been generated by the sinoatrial node, which is 70 to 75 per minute. That is the action potential that they have generated. SAN initiates and maintains the contraction of heart. So they initiate, not only initiate the impulse, but maintain the contraction of heart by the action potential, which is 70 to 75 per minute. So it is called as pacemaker. Sinoatrial node is called as pacemaker. For 1 mark, they would be asking you uh, which is the pacemaker of the heart. Sinoatrial node is the pacemaker of the heart. Okay, so since they are going to generate their own, initiates and maintains the contraction of heart by generating action potential, which is 70 to 75 times per minute, and it is auto excitable. So SAN is called as pacemaker of the heart. So pacemaker is also commonly called as heart of hearts. So SAN is going to be heart for the heart of hearts. So next we'll discuss about is cardiac cycle. Okay, so the cardiac cycle is the heartbeat that takes place within us. So this is how when we take a section of the heart, So you can notice very clearly the entry from the right auricle into the left ventricle, and there is a entry into. So this is a real picture of section of a heart. So you can notice this entry of the blood into the pulmonary vein. Okay, this is the right auricle, right ventricle. They are opening up through this tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. So you can also notice the left ventricle is more muscular than the right ventricle, and the left auricle opens up into the left ventricle, and they pump blood into this aortic arch. So they would be having this aortic arch. So the cardiac cycle, let us understand about that. So it is a cyclic contraction. What is cardiac cycle? It is a cyclic contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping the blood. So cardiac cycle is the cyclic contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping blood. So there is contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping blood. So the phases of cardiac cycle. So there are three main phases of cardiac cycle. The first one is joint diastole. So diastole is relaxation, then followed by atrial systole. Systole is contraction, and after that is ventricular systole. So the phases of cardiac cycle you can easily differentiate into three phases. They are the joint diastole, atrial systole, ventricular systole. The phases of cardiac cycle are of three stages: joint diastole, atrial systole, and ventricular systole. So joint diastole, all of them are under rest, relaxation. So atrial systole, so auricles are going to contract, then ventricular systole. So ventricles are going to contract. So these are the three phases of cardiac cycle. So what is cardiac cycle? It is the cyclic contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping the blood. So the cyclic contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping the blood, we call it as cardiac cycle. The cyclic contraction and relaxation of heart for pumping the blood, uh, we call it as cardiac cycle. There are three phases of cardiac cycle: joint diastole, atrial systole, ventricular systole. So joint diastole, it is the relaxed state of all four chambers of the heart. So when the tricuspid and bicuspid valves open, so it is the relaxed state of all four chambers of the heart. So here you can notice when the tricuspid and bicuspid valves they open, blood from pulmonary vein. So here in case of tricuspid valves, blood from the uh, vena cava, that is superior and inferior vena cava. So they flow into left, so and vena cava flow into the uh, left and right ventricles. Here it is, they flow into the right ventricle. Similarly, the blood from the pulmonary vein they flow into the left ventricle. Okay, uh, semilunar valves are closed at this stage. So blood flows and the semilunar valves are closed at this stage. That is the pulmonary artery and the aortic semilunar valves, they are closed at this stage. But the bicuspid and tricuspid valves are open. So it is the relaxed state of all four chambers of the heart. When the tricuspid and bicuspid valves, at this stage, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open. So blood from the pulmonary vein, it flows into the left atrium, and from left atrium into the left ventricle they flow into. And similarly, the blood from the vena cavas, that is inferior and superior vena cava, they enter into the left auricle and right auricle, and they enter into the right ventricle. Okay, the semilunar valves, they are all closed. So semilunar valves of the pulmonary artery as well as the semilunar valves of the aortic arch, so they are closed. So the semilunar valves are closed. So you can notice the pulmonary artery valves and aortic valves, they are closed at this stage. This is joint diastole. Okay, resting stage it is. At this stage, only the blood flows from left atrium into the left ventricle and right atrium into the right ventricle. Okay, so that is flow of blood into the ventricles that happens here. Then auricular systole or atrial systole takes place. So the sinoatrial node generates an action potential. As a result, both the atria contract. It is called atrial systole. So this increases the flow of blood into ventricles by about 30%. So the sinoatrial node in the joint, in the atrial systole, the sinoatrial node generates an action potential. As a result, both the auricles they contract. It is called atrial systole. It is generated by the SAN. SAN generates an action potential. As a result, both the auricles contract. It is called as atrial systole. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. So there is more blood flowing into the ventricles because of this auricular systole, okay, or atrial systole. So this increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. In the ventricular systole, so you can see this lightened up part showing this sinoatrial nodes action potential, which also results in the auricular systole. Now, the action potential is conducted to ventricular side by AVN. Okay, so auriculoventricular node is now going to in the ventricular systole, the action potential is conducted by the ventricular side, conducted to ventricular side by the activity of auriculoventricular node. So the atrial systole is brought about by SAN, the ventricular systole is brought about by auriculoventricular node action potential conducted to ventricular side by AVN and AV bundle, from where bundle of His transmits it through the bundle of His. You know that the AV bundle plus Purkinje fibers together we call it as bundle of His. So the bundle of His transmits these action potential through the ventricular musculature. Throughout the ventricular musculature, they are going to transmit this uh, action potential. As a result, the ventricles contract. So here the auriculoventricular node is going to conduct this is going to conduct its action potential through the ventricular side by the help of bundle of His. Bundle of His is auriculoventricular node, the AV fibers, AV bundle, and bundle of Purkinje fibers. Together we call it as bundle of His. So it transmits this action potential through the ventricular musculature. As a result, the ventricles contract, and this contraction we call it as ventricular systole. So when the ventricular systole contracts, the during this stage the atria would be under rest. So when the ventricular systole is contracting, the atriole would be under rest. So ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of tricuspid valve and bicuspid valve happens, so which prevents the backflow of blood into the auricles. So the ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, which causes the closing up of tricuspid and bicuspid valves, and uh, which prevents the backward flow of blood into the auricles. When the valves they close, they prevent the backward backflow of blood into the auricles. And the semilunar valves open. So this ventricular pressure, when it increases, the semilunar valves open. So deoxygenated blood enters this pulmonary artery. So from the right ventricle, and oxygenated blood enters the aorta from the left ventricle. So these pulmonary valves are open. The semilunar valves are open. The pulmonary semilunar valves and aortic semilunar valves, they are going to open. So our deoxygenated blood enters from the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery from right ventricle, and oxygenated blood enters aorta from the left ventricle. That is going to happen during this ventricular systole. So the ventricles now relax, the ventricular diastole, and the ventricular pressure falls, so causing, so after the ventricular systole, the ventricles relax, there is a ventricular diastole, and the ventricular pressure falls, which causes the closure of semilunar valves, which prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricles. The tricuspid and bicuspid valves are opened by the pressure in the atria, and ventricles and atria again undergo joint diastole, and the cardiac cycle is repeated. So the ventricle and atria again undergo joint diastole, and cardiac cycle is repeated. So this is what is going to take place. Okay, a cardiac cycle is completed within zero point 0.8 seconds. So a cardiac cycle is completed within zero point 0.8 seconds. Yeah. So one heartbeat is nothing but a cardiac cycle. So normal heartbeat is 70 to 75 times per minute. Average is 72 per minute. So normal heartbeat is 70 to 75 minutes, 75 times per minute. Average heartbeat is 72 per minute. So a cardiac cycle is completed in zero point 0.8 seconds. So one heartbeat is equal to a cardiac cycle. One heartbeat involves three phases: joint diastole, atrial systole, ventricular systole. So where after ventricular systole, they have this ventricular diastole. So wherein the semilunar valves close and the bicuspid and tricuspid valves open because of atrial pressure. So now they all jointly undergo a joint diastole. So all this we have to remember about. So the normal heartbeat is 70 to 75 times per minute. Average is 72 per minute. So now we'll study the definition of stroke volume and cardiac output. So the volume of blood within the ventricle during a, so here the fine. So the volume of blood within the left ventricle during the uh, is around 70 ml. Okay, that is called as stroke volume. So volume of blood in the left ventricle during a uh, ventricular systole. So we call it as the stroke volume, and it is 70 ml. So the volume of blood in the ventricle per minute, if you take it up, it is 70 into 72. So you are going to get the value for it. So it comes to 5400 ml. So that is the cardiac output. So the stroke volume and the cardiac output. So if you look into the stroke volume, so it is a left ventricle if you are going to measure that. So per heartbeat, per cardiac cycle, so the volume of blood pumped by the left ventricle during a cardiac cycle is 70 ml. And stroke, that is what we call it as stroke volume. The cardiac output is per minute. So the cardiac output, if you calculate per minute, 70 into 72, it is going to be 5400 ml per minute. That is the cardiac output. So stroke volume and cardiac output, you can just remember about it. So volume of blood pumped by the left ventricle during a cardiac cycle. So we call it as the stroke volume, and it is 70 ml. The volume of blood pumped by the left ventricle per minute is nothing but 70 into 72. That we call it as cardiac output. So it is going to be 70 into 72. So it will be 5400 ml. So next is the heartbeat or heart sounds during each cardiac cycle. So you can notice here. So the after the entry of atrial systole, after the entry of blood into the ventricles, so there is going to be the closing up of tricuspid and mitral valves close. So with that beginning of systole in the ventricles, it causes that lup sound. And once the end of systole, so, so there is going to be a dub sound. That is aortic and pulmonic valve. They close. The aortic and pulmonary semilunar valves, when they close, it creates the dub sound. So beginning of the systole, there is the tricuspid and mitral valves, that is bicuspid valves, they close. So that creates the lup sound. The dub sound is created by the closing up of the semilunar valves of aorta and pulmonary. semilunar valves. So that creates the end of systole or beginning of diastole. You hear this dub sound. During each cardiac cycle, lub dub. So the heart sounds are lub dub. So which we measure it using the sphygmomanometer, isn't it? So one heartbeat equals a lub plus a dub, lub dub. Okay. During each cardiac cycle, two sounds are produced. The first sound is lub. It is due to the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. The second sound is dub. It is due to the closure of the semilunar valves. So that is aortic semilunar valve and pulmonary semilunar valves. So one heartbeat is a lub and a dub. So the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves at the beginning of systole and the closure of the aortic and pulmonary valves at the end of systole or beginning of diastole. So we call that as the heartbeat. One heartbeat equals lub and dub. So many times they have asked you question. Lub is created whenever in NEET also you can get these questions. Lub sound of heartbeat is created when there is a closure of, so when there is opening of the tricuspid and mitral valves or closure of tricuspid and mitral valves or opening of aortic and pulmonary semilunar valves or closing of semilunar valves. So here it is both the time it is closure, not opening. So lub sound is created when there is a closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Another name for bicuspid is mitral valves. So we are used the term tricuspid and mitral valves. When they close, lub sound is created. So when there is a closure of semilunar valves, they are going to create dub sound, and that is at the end of the systole, or you can also say it as beginning of diastole. So beginning of systole, lub sound; end of systole, it is dub sound, or beginning of diastole, you can say it as dub sound. So one heartbeat is a lub and a dub. Okay, lub dub. Next, what we will be doing is understanding this ECG. So whenever there is a cardiac check, there are different tests that they do. Okay, they have this ECG, and apart from ECG, they also uh, undergo the treadmill test. Okay, electrocardiograph. ECG is nothing but electrocardiograph. It is an instrument used to obtain electrocardiogram. It is an instrument used to obtain electrocardiogram. So electrocardiogram is the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. So the electrocardiogram is the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. So electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. That is what the electrocardiogram is. It is graphical representation. You see on the graph sheets, there would be the reading. So electrocardiogram is the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. To get an ECG, a patient is connected to the machine with three electrical leads. So one is to the wrist, one to each wrist, and uh, to the left ankle. So electrocardiograph is obtained by connecting this machine with three electrical leads, one to each wrist. So wrist part of it, one to each wrist, and to the left ankle. So that monitors heart activity. For a detailed evaluation, so is connected to machine with three electrical leads, one to each wrist and one to the ankle, left ankle, and they monitor the heart activity. For detailed evaluation of heart's function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region for detailed analysis. So multiple leads are attached to the chest region. An ECG, it consists of the following waves. Many times they have asked regarding this P wave, QRS complex, T waves. So in the NEET examination, so remember about this and give a priority, because I've seen many times the questions in not only in CET but also in NEET from this P wave, QRS complex, T waves. So an ECG consists of this waves, following waves. So you can notice this P wave Then there is QRS complex, QRS complex, and T wave. So these three are there. So what does P wave represents? The represents the excitation of atria which causes atrial systole. So this is excitation means depolarization of atria which causes the atrial systole. So the SAN node we are discussing about in the activation of the atria by the SAN node. So represents the excitation of atria which causes this atrial systole. Okay. QRS complex. It represents the depolarization of the ventricles, that is ventricular systole. So QRS complex, they represent the depolarization of the ventricles, or ventricular systole they represent. T wave, they represent the repolarization of ventricles, that is recovery wave. So repolarization of ventricles. So QRS, so both P wave and QRS complex, they are going to represent depolarization. So P wave represents depolarization of uh, the atria. QRS complex represents depolarization of ventricles. So they represents atrial systole and ventricular systole, whereas T wave represents repolarization of ventricles. So deviation in the ECG indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. If there is a deviation in the ECG, it indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. So deviation in the electrocardiograph is indicating the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance in understanding the cardiac cycle. Okay. So there is a P wave which represents depolarization of the atria or excitation of atria. So depolarization means excitation of the atria, that is for the atrial systole. QRS complex represents the depolarization of the ventricles, that is ventricular systole, and T wave represents repolarization of the ventricles. That is, there is a recovery wave. T wave is nothing but recovery wave. It represents the repolarization of ventricles. So deviation in the ECG indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. Now, if you look into a normal heartbeat, so the ECG graph, so this is how you get a very good ECG graph with P wave, QRS complex, and T wave. So those are all there in a normal heartbeat. In a very fast heartbeat, you find that, so you can suddenly see the distance between these P, QRS, and T that has got reduced. So this is the fast heartbeat. In a slow heartbeat, it is pulled or stretched. Okay. In a irregular heartbeat, so some heartbeats are strong, some heartbeats are differences are there. So this is a irregular heartbeat. So through the uh, ECG, you can notice the normal heartbeat, fast heartbeat, slow heartbeat, irregular heartbeat. So you can notice all these things in case of ECG. So deviation in the ECG, this is a normal heartbeat ECG, fast heartbeat ECG, slow heartbeat ECG, irregular heartbeat ECG. So any deviation in the ECG indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. So P wave, you should remember it as the uh, activation of the atria. So or depolarization of atria. So atrial systole. So QRS complex represents the ventricular systole, depolarization of ventricles. T wave represents the repolarization of the ventricles, that is recovery wave. We call it as T wave is called as recovery wave. Okay, so this P, QRS, and T waves. So ECG has great clinical significance. So the cardiac cycle, there is double circulation. Fine. The circulation in which blood flows through the heart twice for completing its circuit. So it is a circulation in which blood flows uh, through the heart twice for completing its cycle. It includes, so this double circulation includes pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So the double circulation includes pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Double circulation is the it is the circulation in which blood flows through the heart twice for completing its circuit. Okay, it includes pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So pulmonary circulation is minor circulation, systemic circulation is the major circulation. So let us understand the pulmonary circulation and its pathway. So circulation between lungs and heart, it is very nearby. So the heart and lungs, you know about that. So the pulmonary circulation involves circulation between lungs and heart. So deoxygenated blood from right ventricle is carried through the pulmonary artery to lungs. So left pulmonary artery, right pulmonary artery, they carry the blood to the left lung and right lung respectively. So to lungs, and from the lungs, the oxygenated blood so is brought by the uh, right pulmonary and left pulmonary veins to the left auricle. So they are brought back through the pulmonary veins to the left auricle. So this is what is the pulmonary circulation. So pulmonary circulation is minor circulation. The systemic circulation is major circulation. Pulmonary circulation is circulation between lung and heart. Lungs and heart, we call it as pulmonary circulation. So the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle is pumped into the pulmonary artery. So from the pulmonary artery, they enter into the lungs. That is the right and left lungs, and there the oxygenation takes place. The oxygenated blood is brought back to the right auricle, so the left auricle by the pulmonary veins. So the oxygenated blood is brought back by the pulmonary veins to the left auricle. So they are going to bring this about. So this is what is considered to be the pulmonary circulation. Now the next one is systemic circulation. So this is the major circulation. Systemic circulation is between heart and various body parts. So the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle is carried by the aorta and from aorta to arteries and arteries to arterioles. So then capillaries and capillaries from there to the tissues. The oxygenated blood is supplied, and from there, the deoxygenated blood from tissues, oxygenated blood is supplied to the tissues. The deoxygenated blood from the tissues, they are going to flow through the venules, veins, vena cava, to the right auricle. So venules, veins, vena cava to the right auricle. So systemic circulation or the major circulation provides nutrients, oxygen and other substances to the tissues and takes away or removes carbon dioxide and other harmful substances uh, for elimination. So and other harmful substances are brought away for elimination. So the systemic circulation, they provide nutrient, carbon dioxide, nutrient, oxygen, and other substances to the tissues and takes carbon dioxide and other harmful substances away for elimination. So they take away for elimination carbon dioxide and other harmful substances. So from the left ventricle, the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle is supplied, is carried by the aorta, and from the aorta to arteries, arteries to arterioles to capillaries. So the oxygen is supplied to the tissues. So the deoxygenated blood from the uh, tissues, they are going to flow into the venules, veins, uh, to the vena cava, to the right auricle. So this is what is the exact systemic circulation. So circulation between heart and various body parts, we call it as systemic circulation. Systemic circulation provides nutrients and oxygen and other substances to the tissues and takes carbon dioxide and other harmful substances away for elimination. So this is what is going to take place during the systemic circulation. So we discussed the double circulation has pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Pulmonary circulation is also called as minor circulation. Systemic circulation is called as major circulation. So wherein the blood is supplied to all the parts of the body, various body parts. So the double circulation involves pulmonary and systemic circulations. Together, you find this in the double circulation. So the next one is hepatic portal system. Sometimes they have asked this for the NEET also. What is this hepatic portal system? It is a system which includes the hepatic portal veins that carries blood from intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. See, in the intestine, there is digestion that is taking place. So blood from intestine will be rich in nutrients. So they are carried to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. Okay. So the nutrients would be delivered to the systemic circulation. So this hepatic portal system, it is a system which includes the hepatic portal vein. So it is a system which includes the portal system, so hepatic portal system, which includes the hepatic portal vein that carries blood from, so the hepatic portal vein carries blood from intestine to the liver. So it carries blood from intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. So before it is delivered to the systemic circulation, it is carried from the intestine to the liver. It is a system which includes the hepatic portal system is a system which includes the hepatic portal vein that carries blood from intestine to the liver before it is supplied to the systemic circulation, before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. The coronary circulatory system, I told you that even the hearts require the supply of the oxygen, nutrients, removal of carbon dioxide, waste materials. So these are done by the coronary circulatory system. So what is coronary circulatory system? It is a system of coronary vessels that circulate blood to heart and from cardiac muscles, to and from cardiac muscles. So coronary circulatory system, it is a system of coronary vessels which includes arteries, coronary arteries and coronary veins. So it is a system of coronary arteries and coronary veins that circulate blood to the cardiac muscles and away from the cardiac muscles, that circulate blood to and from cardiac musculature. So the muscles also, they require oxygen and nutrients. So whenever there is a blockage of coronary arteries, that leads to heart attack or myocardial infarction I told you about. Okay. So this other parts we'll be discussing in the next class. The regulation of cardiac activity and others we'll discuss in the next class. So we'll stop it up to coronary circulatory system. What is coronary circulatory system? So it is a system of coronary vessels that circulate blood to and from the cardiac musculature. Okay, there is coronary artery as well as coronary veins. That is why we call it as coronary vessels. So coronary circulatory system is a system of coronary vessels that circulate blood to and from cardiac musculature. Okay, so with this we'll wind up with today's topic. Any doubts or clarifications you have, dear students? Any doubts or clarifications? Anything you want me to explain?